Hello, today I'm going to go over outlines, which is the next step, sorry, in your Jupyter paper. Ideally, under normal circumstances, you need an outline to go forward with your writing. That is, I would not accept a draft until your outline is done and okayed by me. Now, as grades are no longer really relevant in that respect, and you despite that, you should still do it, and I'm going to explain why. But again, as the grade is no longer relevant, you might say I might skip the outline. Again, I want to tell you why it is important to do an outline. First of all, let me take you back. The year is 1993. I was a junior at the University of Pittsburgh. At that time, most people didn't have computers. Those who did were rich, but the school had computer labs where you could type and print. Now, during finals week, this computer labs were mobbed. So, but this wasn't finals week. I just had a paper to write. I had a 10-page paper in 18th century British novels, having something comparing, as I recall, Moll Flanders with Joseph Andrews. It was a really boring paper, but I had a 10-page paper, had to write it, and I had to go to the computer lab to do it. So I went to the lab, and there I am typing out my paper, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. I'm just typing in along, and around page 5 or 6, there was a surge. Computers all went off. Now this was 1993. There was no Google. There certainly wasn't any Google. There certainly wasn't any Google Drive or Google Docs. There wasn't even memory sticks. They were what were called floppy disks. And if you didn't remember or didn't consistently save your stuff, it was lost. So when I had that surge, my paper was gone. I had to start completely from the beginning. The thing was, I had an outline. And it really wasn't that hard to start from the beginning again because an outline makes basically it clear exactly what you're writing. Still got to write, still takes time, but an outline makes it clear. Now, why outline? It's easy to write a 2-page paper in one sitting. It's not hard at all. I could do it in an hour easily. But how about a 10-page paper? How about a 25-page paper senior year in college? 50-page paper in grad school? You're not going to write that in one sitting. You're going to take multiple sittings, and it's really important that you have the outline with you so you know exactly the scope of exactly what you're doing. First of all, there's the organizational element of it. Before you actually spend so much time writing all these things, you and I can see exactly what you're trying to write before you write it. It's difficult to see it, both for you and me, if it's only in your head. You can't explain that. But if you have a visual outline, it makes it so much easier. Secondly, it allows both you and me, it's like a schematic blueprint. It allows us to see the plan. You're not going to just build a motor from top of your head. You're going to have a blueprint, and you're going to put it together. It's exactly the same thing. Lastly, ever been lost? Having a map is helpful. It tells you exactly where you are and exactly how to get to where you want to go. So you're sitting there writing your paper, and all of a sudden you're lost. You don't know where to go with it. Go back to the outline. It'll tell you exactly where you are and exactly where you want to go. For these reasons, an outline is absolutely necessary for a larger paper. Now, what's the style of outline? There's the literal example. These are on Canvas, by the way, which is my preference. And if you look at it, it is top to bottom, completely and totally sketched out. You could see that when I actually write my paper, I'm going to know exactly what I'm going to write, and it really won't take me long. Then there's literal example number 2. That leaves a bit more room for you to do more with your writing as opposed to sketching everything out piece by piece by piece. And then there is the visual. Visual doesn't work for me. I don't like graphic organizers, but whatever works for you, as long as I can look at the outline and see what your paper will look like before you actually write it, that is fine. Something I want to draw your attention to is Google Docs or Microsoft Word, or most programs will pre-format an outline for you. The way it works, first of all, you've got the stuff up top that kind of shows you, but it's really pretty easy. You just do 1 writing about dogs, breeds of dogs. All I'm doing is pressing enter and then tab. If you don't have a tab button because you're on your iPad, there's a, let me just expand this. There is a thing up here, right there, that will move it over, but you probably don't want that. So, breeds of dogs, then you go into working dogs. Then you have, what's a working dog? A Saint Bernard. Then you have a Rottweiler, etc., etc., etc. This will keep going all the way. Rottweiler is not a good example, but let's say toy dogs, poodle. Then you have different types of poodles. You have mini, toy, standard, who's not actually a toy, but that's, you see my point. Everything is organized. You could see in this paper, I'm going to talk about dogs, and I'm going to talk about breeds of dogs, and I'm going to talk about working dogs, and I'm going to talk about toy dogs. That is how Google works in terms of pre-formatting for you. I highly encourage you to use it. It's your friend. Okay, so your next step in this is the outline. You got to figure out what works for you. What I want to see is organization, and I want to basically be able to see what the paper is going to look like before it's written. A few things I want to mention. You can always find, research, and add more sources. Just because you've written your outline doesn't mean you can't do that. You can always add more info. I will further note your basic outline is the basic structure of your paper, and it will allow me to see exactly what's going on, and if there are major holes, I'll see it before you write it and waste everyone's time. If you have no idea where to start, I want to bring this to your attention. Most of these types of papers fall into the following organizational structure. There's an introduction. There, you introduce the subject. This is basically your inform and explain, like your moon paper. That takes a few pages. Then you introduce the argument. You introduce the counter argument. You analyze the overall argument, which is an analyze and interpret. Then the final point argument, take a stand, propose a solution. Finally, a conclusion. And if you put that all together, that's easily 10 pages. And I haven't even included the works cited, which is part of the 10 pages of the paper. The outline takes that basic structure and injects the specifics and info you have found. So you take this and you just inject your specifics. A strong outline will make your writing so much easier because you don't really have to worry about the organization. It's already there. As you're beginning the actual writing process, as opposed to the research process, which again, you could always research more, just remember, you're not writing to other experts. You're writing to other people who can be counted on to not know what you know and have learned. You have to write clearly and concisely for them to understand. And remember, you're not regurgitating facts. This is not the moon paper. You have a point, and you want to share that point with your audience. At the end of the week, you'll turn in an outline. I will be looking for an organizational structure, that you don't have any major holes in your argument. I'll be looking for a counter argument, an awareness or use of your sources to build your argument, and enough substance to make up a substantial paper. If I don't find these elements, then I will get in touch with you and suggest areas you need to work on. Just so you're aware, upcoming, there will be no peer editing for obvious reasons, but I do encourage you to use your resources. You will do a self-edit, which I will introduce next week. And next week, when we actually start focusing on the writing, because the outline's over, because it's due at the end of the week, we will have mini lessons focusing on intro, quote blends, and establishing an unbiased tones. At this point, don't worry about MLA formatting, but do consider citations, or at least a placeholder, as you write your draft. Reminder, paraphrasing, quotes, facts, and stats all are cited. So, outline, end of the week. Looking forward to it.